what is the breadth of projects and work you're involved in?
No Rangitukia Ahahu. I come from Rangitukia, Te Kautuku station, where I was raised and whakapapatu. And first and foremost, I guess I am supporting that whenua to do its thing, to be recloaked, to regenerate.
On the coast here, we're in such a unique position. Like, we must have one of the highest amounts of whenua Māori percentage-wise out of any region, hey? So that gives us a unique set of skills, a unique set of assets, but also a unique set of challenges. How do you think reforesting our landscapes can happen in a way that fits with whenua Māori?
There is so much opportunity in the knowledge that we've gained over generations and generations of evolving with our landscapes that we can carry through to solutions for recloaking our whenua. But there's also some challenges. For example, the current kind of financial system and setup isn't designed with whenua Māori in mind, I would say. To get resource onto whenua Māori, to borrow against it is a real challenge because there's not the same equity in the land because you can't sell it. You've got hundreds of stakeholders, hundreds of shareholders. For some whenua Māori, you haven't even got decision makers on that land block, so you might not even have a trust set up to make the decision. So yeah, there's plenty of challenges there, but I think if we can lean into designing first for whenua Māori, then we will come up with solutions that work for all land types.
Because irrespective of who owns whenua with a piece of paper, there's always going to be complexities of people, complexities of decision making. There's always going to be financial drivers that need to be considered. So if we can get that right on whenua Māori, it sort of sets a blueprint for anyone in their situation, hey?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
You've done some incredible work on your land blocks. Tell us about that.
So at Te Kautuku, we are underway with regeneration of the whenua. So it's over 900 hectares there. It has gone through its phases of being a sheep and beef station. And one of the really special projects that we've started with first is actually creating a trail across the whenua. For us, there are so many people that whakapapa to that place. It's a really special place. Some of our ancestors, started the beginnings of our hapu and iwi from there. And so there are a lot of people that haven't been able to, and a lot of whānau that haven't been able to connect with it during the stages that it's been locked up as a sheep and beef station. So for us, we're opening those pathways first, reminding ourselves that we are part of the forest, and then allowing people to kind of come in and experience that, we hope means that they've got a connection and can understand their responsibility again to the whenua.
Because we know that when people experience a place, they care about it. And when people care about it, they want to look after it, right?
And I guess the way that we've started to carry out the mahi on our whenua is first to look at the human resource that we have around. We're so isolated in this part of the country. In Rangitukia, there's not huge populations, but there used to be large populations of people. So we have to look first at what skill sets and interests we have in the populations that are there in our ahika, and then start to work with those skill sets to recloak. We have a beautiful Ngā Whenua Rāhui block that's had some protection already. So we can look at the species and the biodiversity that we have in there and say, how can we bring that back to the landscapes that we'd cleared for pasture and for farming in other ways? Where are the areas of our land that we might grow mara, for example? Where are the areas that we might, if we want to have areas for grazing? And what's the best way to restore our waterways? We run from the hilltops all the way to the ocean, our waterways, so we really can be taking actions that ensure that the whole path for those waterways are cleared. One of the places that we've started, because we've been a whānau that has been managing the station as farmers, is to refence. because we know how to do fencing. And so we've fenced off the majority of the whenua. We've done fence-on fencing for deer exclusion as well for part of the whenua. So just, with this existing stock fence, chucked another fence up on top. And we've started to exclude the stock so that it can do its regeneration thing. One of the things we also know is a little bit about is trapping from having had a ngā whenua rāhui presence. So for us, one of our whānau members was able to actually get mahi with ngā whenua rāhui and live on the whenua up home. And so we've got a skill set there, to draw on. So it's been about looking at what skill sets and what capacity we've got on the ground in our ahika and our station managers and in the whānau coming through, and saying, hey, what do we already know how to do? And then once we're doing that we bring in additional expertise to help us to learn the new skill set.
So what we know from our forests, is that if we can exclude the cattle and then exclude the deer, and if we can trap possums in addition to that, it's pretty much all the tools the forests need to be able to really flourish and grow quickly, right? That's pretty exciting to be able to deliver that with the human resource that you guys have available. The part that isn't stacking up for me that I don't quite understand in the model is a lot of our whenua Māori blocks are saying that economically, how do we make, you're running 900 hectares. It's pretty significant. How do we go from running a sheep and beef farm that's generating dividends to regenerating our landscapes with forest and still have it as a financially economic model?
Yeah.
But you've been super innovative in the ways that you manage to find different funding sources. The levers that you have been able to pull are just phenomenal.
It's not a natural concept for many of us to lean into this idea of money when we're thinking about the forest and the environment, and we just want to be one with nature. But we have to acknowledge that one of the key missing pieces to enable our regeneration work and the work to recloak papata wanuku is to bring the resource in to do that. We're very isolated here out on the east coast, so what are some ways that we can do that without actually having to extract from the whenua and transport a whole lot of goods along the roads and out of region and ship them off, for example? Economic viability for our whenua, and it's the same for many whenua across the east coast and elsewhere, has always been a challenge. So whilst we have been operating farming operations, sheep and beef farming, we've also had to layer on other economic revenue, other revenue streams. So we've through a time had manuka honey, we've done goat farming way back in the day, we've looked at queen bee rearing when the markets weren't there for honey, we have looked into oils from our native trees, tourism operations, stacked on into the farming system because of the distance we are, perhaps, and also just the landscape, the steep slopes that we haven't been profitable for farming alone. So we've always had to be a little bit creative, I suppose, with our revenue streams for that whenua. And now what we're looking at is, hey, how can we create new revenue streams that are actually as much as possible in alignment with our roles as kaitiaki of that whenua? And the thing that we've thought about is how do we create revenue streams that aren't extractive of our whenua? One of the things that we do have in abundance is knowledge. And it is the ability to tell stories. For me, when I think about the way of telling stories that might enable resource to flow, there are some ways of doing that through the data, through the proof that we're doing mahi on the ground, and the proof that systems are regenerating. So I see data as another way of telling our story, and it's a form of storytelling that markets can see. So what we've been exploring is nature markets and how we might use those nature markets to bring more resource into our regeneration projects for the whenua on our own terms. Internationally, there's a huge interest in the proof of existing biodiversity because we haven't got A whole lot of it. The world needs more of it.
So people are genuinely interested in our biodiversity in Aotearoa as overseas international funders.
We often don't realise how special we are here and how much we have an opportunity to protect the remaining biodiversity that exists on the planet. There are a lot of places that aren't able to restore the biodiversity. Internationally, there is a big interest in supporting places that can enable more nature to exist, because when you enable nature in one place and help to restore it in one place, it actually has a global impact. And so that's what a lot of these markets are looking for.
You went and yarned at the UN. That's pretty amazing for us on the East Coast to have you go over to New York and to represent us here on the East Coast. That must have been an incredible experience.
Yeah, I can't believe that I had the experience of going to the UN, to the Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues. It was very surreal, but at the same time, it felt like our story as Indigenous peoples who have had challenges around displacement from our lands and the ability to be kaitiaki and guardians of our lands. It felt like you actually really connected globally, because what I got to see and to hear was the stories of other Indigenous peoples from all over the globe. One of my key takeaways was that we have a whole network worldwide of Indigenous peoples that are experiencing similar challenges, and some are a lot more challenged than what we have here. So like, for example, stories of people who are getting disappeared in their own countries for doing things like this, for talking about the protection of nature, going against big industry and standing up for their forests essentially and their natural landscapes. So we've got an opportunity, I guess, to be leaders in this space, to be world leaders.
That's really excellent context, because we sometimes think that our challenges are so vast and so large, but for some people, it sounds like those challenges are even greater. You're such an inspiration, Oi. Your innovative thinking around financial models, it's so inspiring for us. Like, I'm so grateful we have someone like you here on the East Coast to help us sort of navigate these pathways.
It's not just me. There's a whole, there's a whole ecosystem of people playing into this space and actually trying to pursue these kind of ideas and develop new markets and new revenue streams for whenua, new ways of doing things. It's never going to be possible to just do that one thing. Just like a forest, you've got to do everything everywhere all at once. Pest control alone isn't enough. Stock fencing alone isn't enough. Planting alone isn't enough. You've got to have all of those layers. So I just see my role as part, a part of that whole ecosystem of things that needs to go on.
If I was to ask you what thinking like a forest meant to you, what would you say?
Thinking like a forest reminds me that we are collective and diverse. Thinking like a forest is not one tree on its own ever. So it reminds us that we're part of a whole ecosystem of people, of our different environments, different ways of thinking and different jobs to be done to make that ngahere thrive. I think the forest has so much to teach us about our own selves, our communities. Like a forest community is so layered. It's got so many dimensions, and every single part of it, there is a special role to play for each part. So we as communities can learn from that and understand that we're the same. Like, we might be all different and bring something different, but we're all equally important in that kind of community ecosystem. The forest, the ngahere, reminds us of all of that. And then also I would say that we, at the point in time that we're at now, we have introduced things into our forest that aren't naturally part of that ecosystem, and so we can see the impacts of that, where we've got weeds and we've got pest species that are throwing our ngahere out of balance. It's actually our responsibility as the ones who have brought those species in to return that balance. So it's quite obvious that we've got a role to play in the forest ecosystem.